From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana.
About 3 years ago, I finished medical school, and I was about to start my own clinic, but due to Taliban, I couldn't continue that, and now I'm at home.
A few months after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, we spoke to a female doctor in Kabul who was in hiding at the time.
It's been like 6 months that I'm at home. I tried to raise my voice also in protests, but after I became pregnant, my husband didn't allow me. He said that you shouldn't participate anymore. But most of my friends are missing. Even though Taliban say that we're forgiving everyone and we don't punish anyone, but every day, like 10 or 12 people just disappear from their houses.
Today, we speak to her again.
Every day we think that today you will be punished. They say that if someone is not going to obey our laws, if someone is going to disobey, we will punish them by sending them to prisons. And we are in fear that someday maybe we will go to prison. And this is the situation now in Afghanistan.
It's been 3 years since the Taliban took control of the country. Since then, Afghan women have been stripped of their rights, culminating last month in a new law which bans them from ever being heard in public.
It's almost as if we've just moved on and, oh yeah, there is this country where in 2024 girls can't go to school, women can't go to university. And I don't think that's right. I don't think we should be accepting this. We should all feel shame that this is happening.
It's being called a gender apartheid. Women have no rights as citizens. Afghanistan has become a pariah state with no country in the world formally recognising this government. And yet, there's one place where the country still seems to be welcomed: in the world of cricket.
We're on the first day of this historic Afghanistan versus New Zealand test match, the first time these two sides have ever met. Neither have played since that T20 World Cup where Afghanistan had that amazing run to the semi-finals. New Zealand will want to get the better of them in this first ever test match between these two sides.
This week, the Afghan cricket team takes on South Africa, a country that faced a cricket ban for years during their apartheid. The story today: it's just not cricket, why Afghanistan is still allowed to play.
My name is Christina and I'm Chief Foreign Correspondent of the Sunday Times.
And Christina, you've been covering Afghanistan for so many years. When was the last time you were out there?
So the last time I was in Afghanistan was about 1.5 years ago. I've been 3 times since the Taliban took over in August 2021. But unfortunately, they changed the rules for journalists about 1.5 years ago and basically don't really let Western women journalists in anymore. So sadly, I haven't been able to go back.
That's quite the sign. What was it like when you were last there?
It feels really odd because, after all the 20 years of NATO countries fighting the Taliban along with the Afghan forces, to suddenly see Taliban everywhere and wandering around. And also, of course, they inherited all the American equipment that was left behind, like Bradley vehicles and lots of Oakley sunglasses. So you have this slightly bizarre sight of Taliban riding around on these Bradley fighting vehicles with American sort of US Marine caps and Oakley sunglasses.
And Christina, the Afghan men's cricket team is playing South Africa. Why has that turned into such a controversy?
So it's turned into controversy because, of course, a lot of people are saying, given the situation in Afghanistan, which is undoubtedly the worst place in the world to be a woman, so many rights are being deprived from people, and not least it's the only place on earth where girls can't go to high school. Should we really be playing a sports team, a cricket team, against a country that is doing this?
And it's ironic that they're playing South Africa because obviously South Africa faced a ban for many years. Just remind us what happened back then and the impact it had.
Well, that's why people are talking about this, because they're pointing out that during apartheid in South Africa, one of the ways that was used to really put pressure on the South African regime was boycotting of sports, because South Africa is a country which loves its sport. But I think the two situations are actually quite different, because first of all, South Africa was, well, it's strange to say it was a democracy because it was only a limited number of people that could vote. It was only white people that could vote, but those people could vote and show their views. In Afghanistan, nobody can vote. So even if people of Afghanistan feel upset that they're no longer able to see their cricket team playing in international tournaments, there's nothing they could do about it. They can't change the government. So I'm not sure exactly what it would achieve. And it's interesting because I can see why people make the comparison, and also many people, I agree with this, call what's happening in Afghanistan gender apartheid, that if you're a woman, you're not getting the same rights as men. And that is obviously absolutely wrong. But what many of my Afghan friends, including Afghan women, say to me is, we like the cricket. It's like the one thing that we can watch. It's a symbol of hope. The Afghan cricket team's been extraordinarily successful. I've covered Afghanistan since the late 80s. There was hardly cricket there then. In fact, the Taliban, when they were in power before in the 90s, banned cricket. They banned all sports, really, and they used the stadium notoriously for executing people and stoning people. But towards the end, they did allow cricket again, I think in the last year. And cricket became very popular among Afghan refugees. And as those people came back after the last Taliban were removed in late 2001, they were bringing their love of cricket. So what many people say to me is that watching that, it gives them hope and helps them sort of forget the misery of the situation. And I think one of the things we should bear in mind too, which is quite interesting, is they play, although they're mostly living in Afghanistan, which as we know is controlled by the Taliban, and the Taliban are sort of, happy to have this, to be associated with this team, they actually play using the flag of the previous government, the red, black and green flag. They sing the anthem from the previous government, which has now been changed by the Taliban. At the same time, the Taliban are not stupid. They're very savvy, and they've realized that being associated with this rather successful team is a good thing. So they are trying to sort of, latch onto it. They tweet about it. They've, had meetings with the cricket players. And so they're getting some kind of kudos too. So it is complicated, like many things.
That's so fascinating, because you're right. I think a lot of the people who are campaigning for a boycott just wouldn't know that it might be one of the things that brings a bit of joy to the women in Afghanistan.
Yeah, when there's nothing really else to bring joy at the moment. So the Taliban are passing all these terrible decrees and directives banning women and girls from doing almost anything now. I mean, they can't go to gyms, they can't go to parks, they can't speak out loud in public, they can't sing. And, anything that they could think of, they're banning women from doing.
It's, in a way, got much worse over the past month when they introduced a very draconian new law. Just talk us through what it does.
They have this ministry for the promotion of virtue and prevention of vice, as they call it. And they issued a new set of directives under that, which covered many things, but said that women need to be absolutely, totally covered. You can't even see their faces or hands. They have to wear gloves. They have to wear masks over their face if they're not wearing the sort of full hijab. And they also can't speak out loud in public. They can't sing. It does sort of feel like the Taliban is sitting there thinking, right, what else can we do to make women's lives a misery? You have all these young women and teenage girls basically, stuck behind four walls, not able to go out, not able to study. And we've seen very high rates of suicide among young women in Afghanistan. There are also lots of reports of the Taliban abducting women and forcing them to marry them. And, it is just a really horrendous situation. My heart breaks to see the way that women are being treated there.
Hello?
Hello? Hi.
Hello? Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How about you?
I'm fine. When we last spoke, it was very chaotic. It was just after the Taliban had taken over. It was about 6 months in.
Yeah.
And you were in hiding back then because you'd been taking part in protests for women's rights.
Yeah.
Where are you now? Just roughly.
Currently, I am living in Kabul. We were in Parwan province for some time. We were living in poverty and we didn't have money. After that, when the situation got calmer, and we moved back to Kabul province, and I start working as a gender-based violence counselor in one of the clinics, and now I am in Kabul currently.
So you're able to work now?
Yeah, I am working now.
And there are no problems with the current government in terms of that?
We have problems such as we have to be with our mahrams. We cannot go outside without a mahram. It should be fully covered hijabs. Yeah, with mahram or chaperone. Yeah.
And you're chaperoned?
Yeah. Also, we have a restriction in our clinics. For example, many women who came without their chaperones or mahrams are not allowed.
So you have to go to work with a chaperone?
No, not working. Just our male chaperone should accompany us until our clinics, and after that he should go to somewhere, and we have to be in separated rooms because in our rooms we are not allowed to have males talk to us. That is why our colleagues are also females. That's why our chaperones are not allowed in the clinic. Also, we have problems going to parks, public parks, beauty parlors, public baths, gyms for women. They are all banned. We don't know where to take our kids to have fun, and because all the public places and parks are banned for women.
You're not allowed to go to parks?
Yeah, we're not allowed to go to parks, and even we're not allowed to go to out of the city. Some places, like Salang, Parmont, there are beautiful places, but now we cannot go there. It is not allowed for women with their family to go outside the city. It is very hard for them to provide money, or most of them are widowed during the past era. Their husband got killed, But now it is really hard for women to provide bread or money for their children, for their family,
Yeah.
as 90% of women are jobless and are at home.
Take us back 3.5 years before the Taliban came back again. Just give us a sense of what your life was like then.
Before Taliban, it was normal. It was fine and normal for us. Everyone could study, everyone could go out without any male chaperone. It was like normal. But after Taliban took over, everything just started getting worse and, bad for women. And it is getting harder day by day for women. I have a little sister. She started to study, but Taliban, as they banned universities, it's been like 2.5 years or 3 years that she is at home. All of the girls are now hopeless. Most of them, in the clinic, I heard many girls who committed suicide because of hopelessness. I had a patient, she committed suicide because she saw that there are no hopes for her future. It's like every girl should wait for someone to marry her, and there are no other ways for a girl to be hopeful for, and nobody cares about it. And I talked with one mufti or mullah, someone who thinks he knows much about the religion, that why are you banning women from studying? Because in Islam, the first word of the Quran that was sent to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was Iqra, which means to read. And it is not prohibited for a woman to read or work.
And when you put it to that scholar that the Quran encourages people to read, what response did you get?
They say that it is not permanent. We will manage to let girls and women to study, but it is our age that is passes. My sister is now 21 years old, and her young age, at the age that she could learn and study, it is passing day by day.
Yeah.
And after, when she is old age, and she has children of her own, she wouldn't be able to study properly as she can now.
Yeah. Last month, the Taliban introduced the strictest measures so far.
Yeah.
They banned women from even being heard in public. How did you hear about that, and what did you think when you heard that was the new change?
I heard it from BBC and from television, and everyone was gossiping, like, why like this? But the situation is so hard on women. Just every day, everything that is announced, it is not a surprise for us. We know that even worse is gonna come. They have banned women from being heard. So I think it is getting worse and worse, and it is not helping anyone in any way.
And how do you manage going around, getting to work? How do you manage never to be heard when you're outside, when you're in public?
It is hard. It is hard, but every day we think that today we will be punished. Um, we will get a punishment, as they say that if someone is not going to obey our laws, first we will talk to them, and if someone is going to disobey, we will punish them by sending them to prison. And we are in fear that someday maybe we will go to prison, and this is the situation now in Afghanistan.
When we last spoke to you, you were actually pregnant. You gave birth to a little daughter since then.
Yeah.
When you look at her, do you worry? You managed to get an education, you were a doctor. Do you worry about what her life will be in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I worry a lot. And, now I am pregnant with my third one.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Day by day, just the thought of her being restricted from learning, from going to gyms. And, I have a lot of dreams for my baby girls, that they should study, they should participate in sports. But I see the future darker. That time I said that I would manage to get out of Afghanistan, but due to financial problems, I even couldn't do that. And now I don't know. Every day that I think about it, I just think that I'm getting crazy, because it is really hard for a mother to think that her daughters will remain in such a situation that they feel helpless.
Yeah.
As I do feel for my sister, that she cannot do anything about it. The past 20 years of era without Taliban, women were progressing. They gained some of their rights. But now I think even if this era stops and women will be allowed to study and work, I think we have to fight once again from the beginning for our every human right that we should have.
Christina, you've been covering Afghanistan for decades now. How does this current version of the Taliban, how does it compare to what we had pre-2001?
Well, as you will remember, when the Taliban took over in August 2021, people were then discussing, have the Taliban changed? Is this Taliban 2.0? They're not the same. I didn't know, but I felt like, well, Afghanistan has changed. It's not the same as when the Taliban ruled before. When the Taliban ruled before in the 90s, Afghanistan was really isolated. There were no mobile phones. There was no internet. You couldn't even make direct dial calls out of Afghanistan. Just to give you an example, after 9/11 happened and I went to Afghanistan, people there were all saying to me, what is this building? What is this World Trade Center? How can so many people have been in one building? They couldn't envisage it because they'd not seen pictures. There was no TV. All of that was banned by the Taliban then. Now, for 20 years since the Taliban were toppled last time, that's all changed. People have had loads of exposure to the outside world. They've had TV. Lots of people have smartphones, even in very rural, remote places. They're on Facebook.
And we should say 60% of the population were born after 2001.
Yes, this is true.
So won't even have remembered the earlier Taliban.
It's a very, very young country. In fact, 80% of the population is under 30. So, I thought that the Taliban would not be able to behave the way they had before. I'm afraid I was totally wrong because they've done exactly what they did before. But the one way that they have changed is they've become much more savvy. They know how to use social media and they know how to communicate. So in a way, they're actually a scarier version of the Taliban than the previous time. Give you an example. One of the last times I went there was just after the Sarah Everard murder, and there had been that demonstration on Clapham Common where the police were very brutal, and there was that particular photograph of a young woman being dragged by her beautiful red hair by the police. So I went to Afghanistan just after that. And when you arrived in Afghanistan as a journalist, you had to go and get a permission to report from the Taliban. So you'd go to see their head of media, who was a man called Balki. Of course, I immediately said, well, why are you not allowing girls to go to school, etc.? Why are you treating women like this? He quickly pulled up on his phone that photograph and he said to me, you tell me, is that how to treat women? We don't do that. So this is absolutely different from before.
And Christina, how is the international community coping with this new version of the Taliban being in charge?
In my view, the international community are absolutely at a loss what to do. I mean, whatever they're doing is not working, clearly, because the Taliban are just bringing in more and more draconian restrictions against women. So, there has been no shortage of Western officials, to be fair, engaging with them and saying, you can't treat women like this. But they don't have any power, because I think the feeling was at the beginning that the outside world had leverage over the Taliban because Afghanistan is such a poor country and so dependent on foreign aid, and so many millions of people on the verge of starvation, that the Taliban needed help from the outside and therefore would be amenable to making some changes. That's not the case at all. I think they have figured that the international community is not going to let Afghanistan starve. And rightly, I don't think we should be punishing the population of Afghanistan because there is a government there we don't like. I mean, most of them don't like it, I think, either. But it's a bit like the cricket. It's, again, a very complicated situation. If you give them aid, that's helping the Taliban. There's no doubt that it's a better situation for the Taliban if foreign aid is coming in and people aren't starving. And also, you kind of have to work through them because they are the people in power. It's a landlocked country. Things have to be flown in. You can't get the aid in without working with the Taliban. So it is difficult, to be fair, to know what to do. We shouldn't cut off dealing with the Taliban because they are the only people in power. They're not going away. But I certainly feel that every meeting that international officials go to, they should always take women. To make Taliban have to deal with women.
Yeah, whereas we had a surreal situation where the UN were agreeing not to do that in order to keep talking.
Exactly, which was, appalling, and they should never have agreed to do that. So, that's the sort of minimum thing we can do is because Taliban want these meetings, they want to interact.
Do you think we'll reach a point where you'd be able to return to Afghanistan and report from there?
I hope so. I find it so sad that, it's a country that is so close to me. It's the very first place I ever reported as a correspondent back in the late 80s. And I've gone back and forth, and to feel, that I can't go there is just really, really frustrating. I'm in touch with people there. I try and still make sure that we report on what's happening through some of the brave Afghan women reporters and people that are still there. One of the big frustrations, I think, is that when the Taliban first took over and first quite quickly banned girls from going to high school, there was absolute outrage about it. How could this happen? Now, 3 years on, no one really talks about it. It's almost as if we've just moved on. And there is this country where in 2024, girls can't go to school, women can't go to university. And I don't think that's right. I don't think we should be accepting this. It's just a horrendous situation. We should all feel shame that this is happening.
That was Christina Lamb, Chief Foreign Correspondent at the Sunday Times, and we heard from an Afghan doctor who we're keeping anonymous for her own safety. You can find more of our reporting from the region and all the latest on the cricket at thetimes.com. The producer today was Taryn Siegel. The executive producers were Kate Ford and Fiona Leach. Sound design and theme composition were by Maula Seto. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.